I'm Beck and welcome to my best books of 2024. I have a few standout favourites from last year, even though I read an embarrassingly low amount of new 5-star books. I read 74 books in the whole year, and for some reason I only found 3 new 5-star reads. I did a few rereads and those also hit 5 stars, but they're to be expected because I've read them before. So I'm only going to talk about books that I newly read in 2024. So without further ado, I'll dive into my 3 5-star favourites of 2024 and then a few honourable mentions after that. Not too many though, because otherwise this video will be a mile long. Now, I really struggled in 2024 with different series, and it's like my expectations were either too high or the book just undercut them completely, which is so disappointing because I had very many misses throughout the year, but thankfully this series was not a miss at all, and that is Brother Song by TJ Klune. I don't really like many other TJ Klune books, but this series, starting with Wolfsong, is my absolute standout favourite, and throughout reading this, I was just a mess. I was absolutely a mess. I was crying. I loved it. It was the best, and honestly, if you want werewolves, if you want male romance, if you want found family, if you want community and support, this is the perfect book. It's set in the small town of Green Creek. The first book follows Ox. His father has left him when he's quite young, so it's just Ox and his mother. His father wasn't a very nice person either, so he kind of gets almost semi-adopted by Gordo, who runs the local mechanics shop, and he's trained up as a mechanic. And while he's, doing his training, coming home one night, the Bennett family have actually moved in across the road, and this little boy named Joe is waiting there as he's walking home. And it's eventually later on, as they are both adults, a romance between Ox and Joe. But initially they just form this lovely bond of friendship. But it's about Ox starting to come out of his shell and bond with the Bennett family. And obviously the Bennett family turn out to be werewolves. That's where the whole werewolf element comes in. And I just honestly love how each book builds on the world building. It adds to the characters and the depth of each character. Not every book follows Ox. He is the main character in book 1, but the other books follow different main characters and then peripherally have the Bennetts in it. Usually I dislike it when a series goes away from the characters it's set up in book 1, but I just adore this. I adore it with all my heart, and I honestly am so excited to reread it because it just brought me so much, I want to say joy, even though I bawled my eyes out. It just brought me so much joy. I'll leave it at that. So that was my top book of 2024, and it's followed closely behind by this one. And I actually really struggled to differentiate of which was my favorite, but given that that was the last book in a series, so I had a lot of emotional value invested in the series already, Brother Song won. But if I hadn't read Wolfsong in 2024, this book would have won. And that is The Will of the Many by James Islington. And I have a separate spoiler-free review of this one. And I say in that video that it's a new favorite book because it is just incredible. And everyone who I've recommended it to, both online and in my personal life, have absolutely loved it. And it follows Viz. He's about to turn 18. And when you turn 18 in this society, you end up having to cede your will. So that's C-E-D-E, cede it to the hierarchy. And you basically feed off your power, you siphon it off, and you become part of the overall structure. And he does not want to do that. He's never ceded will before. And because of this, he's trying to gather as much money as he can and escape the city. But before he can do that, he's fighting in underground battles to win coin. And someone sees him there and decides that they want to adopt him and take him on their own mission. And that mission is to infiltrate the academy because people can't get in there unless they're students. And there's a conspiracy going on. There's been a death. Something is happening. And so Viz gets caught up in a political conspiracy. He gets trained up to go to this academy. And it honestly ticks so many boxes of orphan child, rags to riches, unwilling hero, magical school. It does them so uniquely with a lot of grit added in that I was obsessed. It's like it took all my favorite things and made them new, and doing that with tropes that are tried and tested that you've seen everywhere before, it's really hard to do something new with them. So I have massive respect and massive enjoyment of this book, and the sequel to this comes out in May and I'm so keen for it. I want to do actually a reread before that sequel comes out. Whether I'll have time or not is another issue entirely, but I would just love to reread this. I would love to revisit it because it is honestly one of the standout books of 2024, and if you haven't read it yet, I must tell you to read it because it's honestly one of the best fantasy out there right now. And then my third 5-star of 2024 is The Spell Shop, and this is a beautiful cozy fantasy, so it is very different in vibes to the first 2 that I mentioned. And this follows Kiela, and she's a librarian at the Great Library of Elysium. However, there are rebellions and riots in the city of Elysium, and so things are happening that are not great for the library, namely a lot of fires are happening. And so Kiela and her sentient houseplant Kaz, who has been bewitched to be able to talk and interact with things, both of them flee the city, and they flee the city with crates of books that Kiela has been stocking up because she's seen the rebellion on the uprise. And so they flee to this small island about a day's boat travel from the main city. And this is the island that Kiela was born on, but then has not lived there for a very long time. Her parents moved her to the mainland when she was 8. So she's now got to regrow her roots there, I guess, and reconnect with everyone after being isolated very much at the library with her research. So she's got to relearn how to talk to people. And it's got a beautiful romance with this guy who knew her as a kid, and now he's an awkward adult on the island as well. And they're both kind of misfits, but with such hearts of gold. And it was just such a beautiful story. It had such ups and downs, and it wasn't just a contained story. It actually had a decent plot with it as well. And when I'm reading a cozy fantasy, it can really go either way. I can go, oh yeah, I guess it's okay, but I'm bored. But with this, it had the impact that I wanted, and I really enjoyed it. So it's another one that I think people have been talking about quite a lot, and I finally got on the bandwagon for it, and I'm so glad I did, because sometimes popular books are not always for me, but this one, The Will of the Many, both of them were absolutely for me, and I'm so happy that I read them. And then because I had such a lack of 5 stars, I have a couple of 4-star honorable mentions that I wanted to call out in this video, and one of them is The Phoenix Keeper, which I also have a spoiler-free review of. Everything relevant I will have linked below, but The Phoenix Keeper is another cozy fantasy, which is why it popped immediately to mind after talking about the spell shop. But the Phoenix Keeper very much focuses on Ayla, and she is a phoenix keeper at this magical zoo, and unfortunately the phoenixes are not as revered by everyone as Ayla wants them to be, and so she's got to reinvigorate their breeding program somehow, but she's figuring out how to do that because she has no idea. And at the same time, there is a griffin keeper, and she has all of these shows. The griffins are so popular, so this griffin keeper is pretty much her rival, and it's a bit of a romance as well. And I just love the themes of conservation and caring for wildlife that were so present in this book. I also really enjoyed the way that Ayla's anxiety was represented as well, and I think that it was given the right gravity, and it spiraled in the right ways, but also was reined in the right ways and supported in the right ways too. And it actually gave me a bit of an emotional kick more towards the end that I wasn't expecting. I was just kind of plodding along, enjoying myself, and then I went, oh, that made me a bit emo. So I'm really happy that it actually got its hooks in me, and I cared enough to get emotional about it. So that's why I wanted to bring it up. Another one that I wanted to talk about was a standalone fantasy book, and that is The Sky on Fire by Jen Lyons. And Jen Lyons has written a very long dragon-inspired fantasy series, but if you want to get into her writing style, I would recommend starting with the standalone, because this follows Anarod, and she's trying to survive away from the life she knew. However, one day an adventuring party in this wild forest saves her from the local warlord, but it's actually not as innocent a save as she thinks it is, because somehow these characters are tied to things in her past, and they rein her in to go on this heist against a dragon. And she has history with the place that they're going and the dragon in question that they're going to steal from, namely that the dragon Neveronimus wants her dead. And if you want to hook me on a story, tell me it's got queer characters, a heist, and dragons, and I'm in. And that is exactly what this had, and I had a great time with it. I also liked that it was contained to one story. To be fair, if she wanted to revisit it and write something else, she probably could, but it felt very much contained and concluded after finishing this. It is a fun, fast-paced story. It is quick without being alienating, so you can still keep up with the world building, with the characters and the intention without being swallowed by the rapid pace of the plot. I really enjoyed this one, as you can probably tell, and that's why I just had to include it on here, because Jen Lyons is an author that clearly keeps doing things that I enjoy, and I hope she publishes another book soon because I need it. Now, it honestly wouldn't be a best books video if I didn't include one of my favorite series. I don't think I can categorize him as a favorite author anymore because I've liked and disliked almost an equal amount of his books now, but I read Wind and Truth by Brandon Sanderson, and while I didn't quite get obsessed with it in the way that I've been obsessed with the previous 4 books, I still ended up landing on a 4-star rating, and because it's the 5th book in a very long-standing series, I don't want to say anything about it. I did talk as a spoiler-free review in my December wrap-up, which I'll link, and I also recently did a spoiler review going through everything in this book that I both liked and disliked, and I'll link that as well if you are also a Stormlight fan and you want to discuss specifics. But I felt like I had to include it on this video. It wasn't as high up as a 4 stars as the other books that I've mentioned, but it was still worth reading. Thank goodness, because it was 1,300 pages. If it wasn't worth reading, oh my god, imagine. But I enjoyed this one, and I feel like I'm crazy for reading a 1,300 page book. But anyway, those are all of the books that I absolutely loved in 2024, and I'm really hoping in 2025 that I find a lot more 5-star reads, because having only 3 new books as 5-star reads is a little bit abysmal, especially because I read over 70 books in the entire year. So I'm hoping that my stats not even level out, just improve in 2025. But if you found any favorites, especially in fantasy, please let me know, because I'm very keen for recommendations. But thank you so much for watching this video. Like, comment, subscribe if you enjoyed. I'll talk to you below in the comments, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye.